I'm Rebecca Martinez, 27. And last Wednesday, my family thought my leadership coaching practice was about to crumble. The call from my mother came through while I was literally shaking hands with the CEO of Northstar Corporation after securing their $3 or $2 million executive development contract. Family emergency meeting this Sunday at 4 p.m. Everyone needs to be there. We have to talk about your situation before it gets worse. My chest tightened immediately. After 3.5 years of my family questioning whether I possessed even basic leadership instincts, they were organizing what felt like a professional intervention. The cruel irony? They had absolutely no idea I'd just closed the largest corporate coaching deal in my company's entire history. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My path toward leadership development wasn't the route my family had charted for their eldest daughter. Growing up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, our working-class household operated on principles of humility, deference, and staying within your designated lane. My father, Carlos, worked as a shift foreman at Midwest Packaging for 19 years, while my mother, Diana, devoted herself to managing the front desk at our neighborhood pediatric clinic. Together, they raised me and my younger brother, Alex, with unwavering convictions about authority structures and social hierarchies. Keep your head down, work harder than everyone around you, show respect to those above you, and never assume you know better than people with more experience. These commandments governed our daily existence. Their faces radiated pure joy when I graduated from University of Iowa with my psychology degree and accepted my first position as a junior training coordinator at Midwest Development Group. I wore modest cardigans, arrived early to every meeting, and never once challenged my supervisor's decisions, even when they seemed fundamentally flawed. Everything shifted during a leadership workshop I was coordinating in Des Moines. I watched the facilitator, Stephen, completely miss the underlying dynamics destroying team morale at our client company. He delivered a generic presentation about communication styles while the real issue, a toxic middle management layer, went completely unaddressed. The senior executives nodded politely, wrote checks, and left with absolutely nothing changed. That evening, I couldn't stop sketching alternative approaches that would actually diagnose and solve the leadership crisis I'd witnessed. 5 days passed, but I remained haunted by that missed opportunity. I found myself developing frameworks for leadership assessment that focused on behavioral patterns, rather than surface-level skills training. Executive Pathways was conceived on coffee shop napkins and smartphone notes during my lunch breaks. The enthusiasm I felt while describing this vision to my parents evaporated instantly when their supportive expressions transformed into worried grimaces. "But you just received that promotion to senior coordinator," my mother reminded me, referring to my recent advancement within the training department. My father's response was characteristically blunt. "Rebecca, honey, you've never led anything bigger than organizing office birthday parties. Leadership development is for people who've actually been leaders themselves. Why would you risk a perfectly good career path for something so far outside your wheelhouse?" Only Alex, who was finishing his business administration degree at Iowa State, demonstrated any genuine excitement about my concept. "This could completely change how companies think about developing their people," he said quietly after our parents retreated to the kitchen. I submitted my resignation at Midwest Development Group anyway. My initial headquarters consisted of a corner desk in a cramped shared workspace in downtown Cedar Rapids, collaborating virtually with 2 former university classmates who believed strongly enough in our methodology to join as founding partners. Catherine managed our operational systems, while David concentrated on research and content development. We sustained ourselves through pure determination and the conservative savings I'd accumulated during my corporate tenure. The earliest client consultations were absolutely devastating. "You look quite young to be advising C-suite executives about leadership challenges," observed one company president. Do you have actual management experience beyond entry-level training? Roles? Inquired another. Perhaps you should focus on individual coaching before attempting organizational transformation, suggested virtually everyone else. Each dismissal reinforced my parents' growing certainty that I'd committed a catastrophic career mistake. Sunday family dinners evolved into systematic cross-examinations. How much longer can you afford to play business consultant before returning to legitimate employment? My father would ask while distributing mashed potatoes. My mother employed more subtle tactics, regularly forwarding job announcements from her network at the medical clinic. The hospital administration is expanding, their human resources team. Excellent benefits package, very stable environment, she'd note in her accompanying messages. Then, Patricia Williamson appeared in my life, a retired corporate training executive who attended our presentation at a regional professional development conference. Her initial consulting engagement worth $38,000 allowed us to implement our leadership assessment methodology with her former colleague's manufacturing company. The project's success provided crucial validation of our approach, but my parents' skepticism only intensified when I missed my brother Alex's graduation ceremony to facilitate an urgent leadership retreat. Even teachers get time off for major family milestones, my mother observed in her voicemail message. As executive pathways gradually gained recognition within Iowa's business community, I connected with Margaret Chen, a former Fortune 500 vice president who became our most valuable strategic advisor. She helped refine our focus toward mid-sized companies experiencing rapid growth transitions rather than immediately pursuing enterprise-level contracts. Her mentorship proved invaluable, though the entrepreneurial journey remained grueling. My small apartment transformed into our unofficial business center when we couldn't justify separate office expenses. I survived on microwave meals and generic groceries while maintaining 12-hour workdays. The stark contrast between my lifestyle and my college friends' social media updates featuring career milestones, international vacations, and engagement announcements was impossible to ignore. Despite these challenges, every successful leadership transformation we facilitated, every heartfelt testimonial from an executive who'd rediscovered their management confidence, strengthened my conviction that we were addressing a genuine market need. This wasn't simply about building a profitable enterprise. We were helping organizations unlock human potential and create healthier workplace cultures. Although I spent most evenings alone with takeout containers, I felt more professionally fulfilled than during my entire conventional career trajectory. The momentum from our early successes carried me through skeptical expressions at family gatherings where relatives seemed to compete in suggesting backup career alternatives. The county government is always hiring people with your educational background, offered Uncle Miguel with a sympathetic shoulder squeeze. Great benefits, and you can't really fail in a government position. Meanwhile, Alex became my unofficial champion, delivering leftover meals from family dinners I'd missed and occasionally assisting with client research and proposal formatting. During those first 20 months, Executive Pathways successfully completed consulting projects with 16 organizations, an accomplishment my family acknowledged with enthusiasm typically reserved for participation awards. They couldn't comprehend what I understood intuitively, that we were establishing foundation for exponential growth. The first serious setback struck like lightning on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Pinnacle Industries, the client that had verbally committed to our most significant contract to date, abruptly canceled their engagement, citing unexpected budget constraints. Their promised $95,000 investment would have covered our operational expenses for 8 months and enabled us to hire our first dedicated full-time team member. Instead, I faced the most challenging conversations of my professional life, releasing David from his part-time role and consolidating all operations within my one-bedroom apartment. My living room became our primary conference space, my dining table converted into our administrative workstation, and my bedroom closet housed our expanding client files and marketing materials. By the end of that month, I'd accumulated over $12,000 in credit card debt, to maintain Catherine's part-time salary and keep our business communication systems operational. The financial pressure became impossible to conceal when my cousin Maria's quinceañera celebration arrived, and I couldn't afford the traditional family contribution for her gift. "I'll just explain that business is tight right now," Alex suggested over the phone, though I detected genuine concern beneath his supportive tone. "Things will definitely improve soon." The subsequent Thanksgiving gathering became an exhibition of my apparent professional misjudgment. Aunt Rosa, my mother's younger sister who possessed an extraordinary talent for disguising criticism as caring concern, orchestrated the family's response. "Have you considered that perhaps leadership coaching just isn't your natural calling?" she suggested while arranging cranberry sauce, serving spoon positioned like a conductor's baton. Cousin Danny, fresh from completing his MBA program and securing employment at his father-in-law's accounting firm, offered to completely overhaul my business strategy as though I'd developed an undergraduate class project rather than a functioning professional services company. My mother intercepted me in the kitchen while I scraped dinner plates clean. Tears gathered in her eyes as she grasped my forearm firmly. "Rebecca, watching you struggle like this absolutely breaks my heart. You're incredibly intelligent and capable, but this leadership development concept, maybe it's simply not who you're meant to be. When will you recognize that this path isn't sustainable?" Before I could formulate any response, my father appeared carrying dessert plates. "Sometimes true maturity means acknowledging when you're attempting something beyond your natural abilities," he declared with finality. "There's absolutely no shame in returning to work that matches your actual skill set." The conversation might have completely devastated my remaining confidence if not for Uncle Tomas, my father's older brother who'd built a thriving landscaping business despite lacking formal education. He discovered me hiding on the back deck, staring into the November darkness. "They can't understand what drives people like us because they've never felt that entrepreneurial fire," he said, offering me a steaming cup of coffee. "Some people are designed to follow instructions their entire careers, but entrepreneurs see problems that demand solutions, and we can't rest until we fix them." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. That restlessness they call unrealistic. That's precisely what separates successful business owners from everyone else. His encouragement provided temporary comfort, but our financial crisis remained dangerously real. Then, an unexpected breakthrough materialized at a small business expo I'd managed to afford through careful budget juggling. I encountered Linda Rodriguez, CEO of Summit Leadership Solutions, a competitor whose regional reputation I'd admired from a distance. Rather than corporate territorialism, Linda offered surprisingly candid guidance during our coffee break conversation. "Your assessment methodology is genuinely innovative, but your client targeting strategy is completely backwards," she explained with refreshing directness. "Stop pursuing companies that can afford any consulting firm they want. Focus on organizations that are scaling rapidly and drowning in leadership challenges they don't know how to address. They desperately need specialized guidance, but established firms won't take them seriously because they're not prestigious enough." Her insight triggered a fundamental strategic pivot. We completely rebuilt our marketing approach around fast-growing companies experiencing leadership growing pains. I missed our family's annual Christmas Eve celebration to finalize a comprehensive proposal for TechFlow Dynamics, a software development company whose brilliant founder was struggling to manage 47 employees effectively. My mother's text message, "Your empty chair at dinner reminds everyone what you're choosing to prioritize," stung deeply, but I pressed forward with unwavering determination. The strategic pivot proved transformational when TechFlow not only hired executive pathways but extended our initial engagement twice, based on measurable improvements in team performance and employee satisfaction. Their CEO, Jennifer Parks, publicly endorsed our work. Executive pathways didn't just help us implement better management practices, They helped me develop into the leader my growing company actually needed. Despite this significant breakthrough, my family's perspective remained completely unchanged. From their viewpoint, I was still the daughter who'd abandoned stable employment for an unrealistic consulting fantasy. My extended work hours weren't interpreted as dedication to building something meaningful, but rather as evidence of desperation and poor judgment. At my friend Lauren's wedding, where I served as maid of honor despite stepping away 4 times, for urgent client communications, extended family members circled like concerned observers. "How's that coaching business working out?" my grandfather asked, displaying genuine confusion about why anyone would leave secure employment to provide advice. The wedding reception transformed into an extended career counseling session, featuring suggestions ranging from, "Have you thought about corporate training positions?" to my personal favorite from my father's coworker, "The city planning department always needs people with business backgrounds and analytical skills." That night in my hotel room, surrounded by wedding flowers and discarded bridesmaid shoes, I reached my absolute lowest emotional point. The accumulated weight of persistent doubt, both external criticism and internal uncertainty, felt overwhelming. I opened my laptop at 2 a.m, cursor hovering over a bookmarked job search website I'd created just in case, following my father's practical advice. The temptation to surrender had never felt stronger. Then my phone chimed with an email notification. A message from Jennifer Parks at TechFlow Dynamics. "Rebecca, I just recommended executive pathways to our parent company, Northstar Corporation. They want to discuss a major organizational development initiative. This could be absolutely transformative for your business." I stared at those words until they became blurry through tears, then closed the job search tab without submitting a single application. At 3 a.m, fueled by vending machine coffee and renewed purpose, I began preparing what would become the most crucial presentation of my entire career. Missing my nephew's first birthday party created another significant rupture in our family relationships. His milestone celebration should have united us all in joy, but I was in Minneapolis presenting to Northstar Corporation's executive leadership team. The meeting couldn't be rescheduled. Their CEO was departing for an international acquisition tour the following morning. My mother's response exceeded her typical disappointment, entering territory of icy detachment I'd never experienced before. "Some moments can't be recovered with apologetic phone calls, Rebecca," she texted alongside a family photograph from the party where my absence created an obvious void in our family circle. For weeks following that incident, our conversations became perfunctory exchanges of essential information, punctuated by passive-aggressive comments about my coaching obsession taking precedence over family obligations and real relationships. My father adopted an alternative strategy, forwarding job listings with alarming frequency. Senior training specialist at Regional Medical Center read one subject line. They specifically value entrepreneurial experience and leadership development knowledge. Corporate learning manager position available, suggested another message. Flexible schedule accommodates family commitments, implying that my irregular availability indicated character deficiencies rather than the natural demands of building a professional service business. The Memorial Day barbecue at my parents' house became an interrogation venue when extended family assembled. Uncle Miguel questioned my business model between grilling hamburgers. "So you teach executives how to be better leaders, but you don't actually manage any employees yourself?" he summarized incorrectly, nodding with exaggerated comprehension. Aunt Rosa cornered me near the beverage cooler, wine glass constantly refilled, suggesting that my leadership fixation might benefit from therapeutic intervention. My friend's daughter experienced similar grandiose thinking patterns, she whispered conspiratorially. 4 sessions with an excellent counselor, and she recognized she was much happier in supportive roles rather than trying to be in charge. The breaking point arrived when my cousin Danny, a junior accountant at the family firm who still resided in his childhood bedroom, offered me an administrative position when you're ready to pursue realistic employment again. My father overheard this exchange and nodded approvingly. It's wise to maintain options, especially from family members who understand your current situation. Something volcanic erupted inside me. My current situation? I repeated, voice rising despite attempts at emotional control. You mean building. A consultancy that's helped 18 organizations improve their leadership effectiveness by an average of 28%. The backyard conversation ceased as heads turned toward our confrontation. Those percentages sound impressive until you examine your actual revenue generation, my father countered, his accounting instincts surfacing automatically. At your age, you should be building toward retirement security, not chasing client testimonials. You've never once asked to review our client impact assessments or success measurements, I responded sharply. You predetermined this was destined for failure before I even started developing our methodology. The argument escalated until I found myself shouting something about suffocating limitations while my mother dissolved into tears. I departed abruptly, ignoring relatives' uncomfortable expressions and my father's demand that I demonstrate adult behavior and accept reality. 3 weeks of family silence followed, finally broken when Alex appeared at my apartment entrance carrying pizza and wine. They're genuinely frightened for you, but they're expressing it completely wrong, he explained, surveying my living space with its whiteboards covered in leadership assessment frameworks and client success metrics. This doesn't resemble failure. To me, he observed, examining our client testimonial board displaying before and after organizational culture measurements. You've never actually shared these results with them, have you? They wouldn't comprehend the significance, I replied, startled by the resentment in my own voice. They equate leadership with having an impressive job title, not actually developing people's potential. An unexpected source of support emerged when my grandmother Elena called one evening, following what must have been another family discussion about my questionable life decisions. I wanted to run the church women's auxiliary once, she revealed, her voice carrying decades of accumulated regret. Your grandfather insisted I wasn't leadership material, that I should stick to helping others rather than trying to be in charge. I listened to him and spent 35 years wondering what might have been possible. Don't spend your life wondering, mija. Her words fortified me against the next challenge. My father emailing an article titled, When Confidence Becomes Delusion, The Millennial Leadership Crisis. The subject line contained only something to consider. Despite ongoing family tensions, Executive Pathways continued building industry recognition. We secured a strategic partnership with Midwest Business Council, connecting us with growing companies throughout the region. Our achievements remained invisible to my parents, who had implemented a policy of deliberate ignorance regarding my professional activities. My mother informed neighbors that I was exploring various opportunities, while my father deflected inquiries about my career with vague references to consulting experiments and transitional phases. The silence between us expanded until one evening. Following a particularly difficult client presentation, where a CEO had questioned whether someone my age could truly understand executive leadership dynamics, I called Alex in tears. Maybe they're absolutely right about me, I sobbed into the phone. Maybe I'm just convincing myself I can help people lead when I'm barely managing my own career. Alex's response was gentle, yet firm. The only person being deceived here is thinking, their approval determines your professional worth. Would you abandon the clients who depend on your guidance just because mom and dad don't understand what you actually do? The conversation provided enough stability for me to focus on our upcoming presentation to Northstar Corporation regarding their massive leadership development initiative. Unknown to me, Northstar's CEO had been quietly researching our background and client outcomes. When the call came with their final decision, I nearly missed it while grocery shopping. Ms. Martinez, this is Robert Harrison, CEO of Northstar Corporation. We'd like to proceed with Executive Pathways for our comprehensive leadership development program. The contract value is $3.2 million over 2 years. I almost dropped my phone in the produce section, After confirming details and implementation timeline, I was required to maintain confidentiality until contracts were finalized. The weight of this validation created tension against my family's disapproval, establishing a strange emotional space where I felt simultaneously vindicated and isolated. The text from my mother arrived at exactly 11:37 in the morning on Wednesday. Family emergency meeting this Sunday at 4 p.m. Everyone needs to be there. We have to talk about your situation before it gets worse. No context, no explanation, just 21 words that triggered unprecedented anxiety. The remaining days crawled past as I mentally prepared for every conceivable intervention scenario. Would they present an ultimatum? Had they consulted a career counselor about my situation? The Northstar announcement wouldn't be released until Monday, one day too late to protect me from whatever confrontation they'd orchestrated. Alex's warning text on Friday amplified my apprehension. They've been calling everyone about you. Grandma Elena, all the aunts and uncles, even Father Martinez from church. This is more serious than anything before. Sunday arrived with relentless sunshine, creating a mockingly cheerful atmosphere as I parked outside my childhood home on Maple Street. The driveway overflowed with familiar vehicles: Aunt Rosa's white sedan, Uncle Miguel's weathered pickup truck, Cousin Danny's leased Camry, that he was still paying off despite living with his parents. Taking several deep breaths, I reminded myself that I was the founder of a successful leadership development firm, not a child summoned for disciplinary action. The scene that greeted me inside confirmed every anxiety I'd harbored. The living room had been rearranged into what resembled a therapeutic intervention circle, with chairs positioned to face a single seat obviously designated for me. My mother's eyes showed evidence of recent crying, while my father stood with arms folded across his chest, his expression carrying the same gravity I remembered from serious childhood conversations. Extended family members occupied every available space, their faces displaying varying degrees of concern, judgment, and uncomfortable anticipation. "Rebecca," my father began after minimal pleasantries were exchanged, "we've gathered everyone here because we're all deeply concerned about your future. It's time for an honest family conversation about your situation." The word situation hung in the air like an indictment waiting for a verdict. Aunt Rosa nodded emphatically, her statement jewelry creating soft chiming sounds with the movement. "We're here to discuss your struggling business, sweetie," my father announced, employing the authoritative tone I recalled from childhood discussions about serious matters. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a crumpled tissue. "This gathering comes from love," she added softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Systematically, family members delivered what appeared to be rehearsed statements that felt sincere despite their fundamental misunderstanding. Uncle Miguel outlined sobering business failure statistics with the confidence of someone reading from prepared notes. 75% of consulting businesses fail within their first 5 years, he explained as though this information would be revelatory. "You're approaching that critical threshold without any major corporate clients or steady revenue streams." Aunt Rosa described her neighbor's daughter who had bounced back beautifully after her event planning venture collapsed, now contentedly working in corporate human resources. "There's absolutely no shame in recognizing when dreams don't align with reality," she assured me, her voice dripping with condescension carefully disguised as maternal compassion. Cousin Danny, emboldened by the supportive family environment, offered to completely reconstruct my professional resume and LinkedIn profile. "My firm's recruitment team could potentially fast-track you into a training coordinator position, maybe even assistant manager with your educational background and experience." His assumption that I would need his services might have been insulting under different circumstances, but now it simply highlighted how completely they had misunderstood my professional capabilities and achievements. Each statement systematically dismantled their perception of my career, constructed entirely without accurate information or any attempt to understand what I had actually built. The devastating culmination came when my father stood, hands buried, deep in his pockets, to deliver what was clearly the primary message they wanted to convey. "Your mother and I have made an incredibly difficult decision," he announced, glancing toward my mother for emotional support and confirmation. She nodded through fresh tears. "We've taken out a home equity loan against the house. We want to provide you with a completely fresh start, enough money to clear your business debts and support you financially while you transition back to stable employment." The room fell into absolute silence as the magnitude of their misunderstanding crashed over me like a cold wave. They had risked their retirement security and home ownership based entirely on assumptions about my business, without ever requesting financial statements, client testimonials, or any factual information about Executive Pathway's actual performance. The fury building inside me must have been visible despite my desperate attempts to maintain composure. I opened my mouth to respond when Alex, who had been uncharacteristically quiet while continuously checking his smartphone, suddenly gasped loudly enough to capture everyone's attention in the room. His eyes widened dramatically as he stared at his screen, color rapidly draining from his face. "Oh my God," he whispered, then looked directly at me with an expression I couldn't immediately interpret. For a terrifying moment, I assumed more devastating news was incoming until he turned his phone toward the family gathering with trembling hands. Why is Rebecca's name featured prominently in Northstar Corporation's official press release about their new leadership development partnership? The question sliced through the room's tension like a lightning strike. Alex's voice rose with each word as he processed what he was reading aloud. "Executive Pathways, founded by Rebecca Martinez, selected for comprehensive organizational leadership. Transformation valued at $3.2 million over 24 months. He stopped reading, double-checking the figures before continuing with obvious disbelief. The absolute silence that followed felt like it stretched for eternity. Every eye in the room moved frantically between Alex's phone screen and my face, searching desperately for confirmation, denial, or perhaps admission that this was some elaborate fabrication designed to escape their intervention. My father lunged forward with uncharacteristic urgency, practically snatching the phone from Alex's grip. His eyes scanned the article rapidly, his facial expressions cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally what hurt most to witness: profound embarrassment. About his assumptions. "This has to be incorrect," he muttered, fingers scrolling frantically through the press release. "This must be referring to a different Rebecca Martinez in the consulting industry." My mother rushed to peer over his shoulder, her tearful expression transforming into stunned bewilderment as she processed the information. "That's definitely our Rebecca in the professional photograph," she confirmed quietly, her voice barely audible above the room's stunned silence. Aunt Rosa abandoned all pretense of dignity, scrambling from her chair to view the screen herself. "Northstar Corporation," she repeated slowly, as though the company name itself was a foreign language she was struggling to pronounce. Uncle Miguel adjusted his reading glasses, confusion etched deeply across his weathered features. "Is this some kind of elaborate publicity stunt?" he questioned, the implication that I might have somehow fabricated the press release being even more insulting than their previous assumptions of professional failure. The fortress of misconceptions they had constructed around my career was visibly crumbling before my eyes, leaving them exposed and disoriented in the rubble of their collapsed assumptions. The heavy silence stretching across my parents' living room felt almost tangible. 24 pairs of eyes remained fixed on me, waiting desperately for explanation, confirmation, or perhaps confession that this was all some sophisticated deception. I stood slowly, feeling steadier than I had experienced in years within these familiar walls. "The press release wasn't scheduled for public announcement until tomorrow morning," I began, my voice surprisingly calm and controlled. "But yes, that's me, and those contract figures are completely accurate." I watched my father sink heavily onto the sofa, Alex's phone still clutched tightly in his trembling hand. My mother covered her mouth with both hands, eyes darting frantically between me and the screen as though attempting to reconcile two seemingly impossible realities. Cousin Danny stuttered helplessly, "But you operate from your apartment. You drive a 12-year-old Honda. You shop at discount grocery stores." His evident confusion about how professional success could exist without ostentatious displays of material wealth might have been amusing under different circumstances, but now it simply revealed the depth of their misunderstanding. "We finalized the Northstar contract last Tuesday," I continued, addressing the entire room but focusing primarily on my parents' shocked faces. $3.2 million for complete leadership development transformation across their 3 regional divisions. They employ over 900 people across 6 states who require comprehensive management training and organizational culture development. I paused deliberately, allowing these numbers to penetrate their consciousness and dismantle their preconceptions piece by piece. We currently maintain active consulting contracts with 22 companies. Our client retention rate exceeds 96%. Last fiscal quarter, we helped our clients achieve an average leadership effectiveness improvement of 34%, measured through employee satisfaction surveys and productivity metrics. The statistics I had tracked obsessively, celebrated privately during late-night victories, and never shared with family now poured forth like water through a broken dam, systematically destroying every misconception they had constructed about my professional life. Our leadership assessment methodology has been featured in 4 industry publications this year. We've presented at 9 professional conferences across the Midwest. Northstar Corporation selected Executive Pathways over McKinsey, Deloitte, and PwC because our approach actually transforms organizational culture, rather than simply reorganizing management structures or implementing superficial training programs. My brother Alex beamed with obvious pride while my father's expression revealed visible mental calculations, his practical accountant's mind finally engaging with my business using actual facts rather than fearful assumptions. Aunt Rosa recovered, first, her social survival instincts activating as she adjusted her narrative with breathtaking speed and shamelessness. "I always told Diana you possessed exceptional leadership qualities," she declared confidently, conveniently forgetting her therapy suggestion delivered just 30 minutes earlier. "The family has always recognized your special potential for guiding others." The audacity of her revisionist history nearly made me laugh out loud. Uncle Miguel cleared his throat awkwardly, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. "Well, this certainly changes our entire conversation," he observed with obvious understatement. "Have you considered expanding into construction industry leadership consulting? My company could potentially benefit from your services." I raised my hand firmly, stopping. His transparent pivot from intervention participant to opportunistic business prospect mid-sentence. "I genuinely appreciate the sudden interest in collaboration," I stated with controlled firmness. "But that's not why we're gathered here today. We're here because not one person in this room, except Alex, ever bothered to actually inquire about my business beyond superficial questions, specifically designed to confirm your negative preconceptions." The directness of my statement silenced the room once again. My mother's eyes filled with fresh tears, but these appeared different from earlier ones, tears of realization rather than pity or concern. "Why didn't you share any of this success with us?" she whispered, her voice carrying genuine confusion and hurt. The question ignited something I had been suppressing for 3.5 years of dismissal and doubt. "I attempted repeatedly to share my progress and achievements, but you were so completely convinced of my inevitable failure that you interpreted every sign of success as self-delusion or unrealistic optimism. You mailed me job applications during the same weeks I was signing major corporate contracts. You informed neighbors I was exploring various opportunities while I was literally delivering keynote presentations at industry conferences. My voice remained steady but gained emotional intensity with each concrete example. When I missed family, celebrations, you assumed it was because I was ashamed of my lack of progress, not because I was building something meaningful that required sacrifice and dedication. You took out a home equity loan without once requesting to review our client, testimonials, financial statements, or business growth projections. The accumulated weight of these truths settled visibly on my parents' shoulders like a heavy blanket. My father placed Alex's phone carefully on the coffee table, his hands noticeably trembling. "We believed we were protecting you from inevitable disappointment and financial ruin," he admitted quietly, his voice barely audible. "We were completely wrong about everything." His acknowledgement, while insufficient to erase years of doubt and criticism, represented the first genuine crack in the wall of misunderstanding that had separated us for so long. Cousin Rebecca, who worked in corporate communications and had remained silent throughout the entire intervention, suddenly became animated. "The Northstar partnership represents massive credibility in the industry," she declared, her professional instincts overriding family drama. "You'll need strategic support, managing the growth and attention this will generate." Her automatic assumption that I would require her professional services might have irritated me previously, but now it simply highlighted how thoroughly they had underestimated my capabilities and preparation. "Our operations team has already developed comprehensive expansion plans," I explained patiently. "We're conducting interviews for 8 new positions starting next week, including senior consultants and project managers." Grandmother Elena, who had observed the entire spectacle with remarkable composure from her corner chair, finally spoke up with the wisdom that comes from 8 decades of life experience. "I always said Rebecca had Sophia's spirit," she remarked, referring to her sister, who had successfully managed a boarding house during the Great Depression, while raising 4 children alone. Her quiet pride felt like the only authentic emotional support in the entire room. I addressed the family gathering one final time, establishing boundaries that should have existed from the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. Moving forward, I would deeply appreciate if everyone would respect my professional judgment the same way you would respect a doctor's medical expertise or an attorney's legal advice. I have built something significant and meaningful, and while I welcome genuine interest in understanding my work, I will not tolerate further interventions based on misconceptions, assumptions, or fear. My mother nodded slowly, acceptance mixing with lingering confusion in her expression. "Will you consider staying for dinner tonight?" she asked tentatively, reverting to her instinctive comfort mechanism of feeding people through complicated emotional situations. "I prepared that chicken enchilada casserole you used to enjoy when you were younger." The normalcy of her invitation against the backdrop of such extraordinary revelations struck me as both absurd and touchingly familiar. "Not tonight, Mom," I replied, gently but firmly. "I have extensive preparations for tomorrow's official announcement, plus several client calls scheduled for this evening." As I gathered my belongings to leave, various family members approached with awkward congratulations and hastily retrieved business cards, their earlier concern morphing seamlessly into networking opportunities and potential business prospects. I departed with measured dignity, neither gloating over my vindication nor diminishing the significance of what had just transpired between us. The validation I had secretly craved from my family had finally materialized, but its emotional value had diminished considerably during the years I had spent learning to believe in myself and my vision without external approval. Walking toward my practical 10-year-old Honda, actually an 8-year-old Civic I had chosen for reliability rather than status or image, I felt emotionally lighter than I had experienced in years, finally unburdened from carrying their disapproval and doubt for far longer than necessary. The Northstar announcement created an immediate whirlwind across industry publications, professional social media platforms, and business news outlets. My carefully maintained LinkedIn profile, which had previously generated perhaps 30 views weekly, suddenly attracted thousands of connection requests from potential clients, strategic partners, industry journalists, and curious observers, seeking to understand how a relatively unknown consultancy had secured such a prestigious contract. Our modest shared workspace immediately felt inadequate as reporters requested interviews, photographers wanted office shots, and industry analysts, sought background information about Executive Pathways methodology and growth trajectory. Within 10 days, we had signed a lease agreement for legitimate headquarters in downtown Cedar Rapids, 4,000 square feet of professional office space featuring dedicated conference rooms, individual workstations, a modern kitchen facility, and reception area that didn't double as storage space. The team expanded rapidly from our core group of 4 to 26 employees, including several senior consultants and industry specialists who had previously been beyond our financial reach or professional credibility. My personal phone remained conspicuously silent from one particular category of contacts: family members who were apparently processing the dramatic revelation and their fundamental misjudgment of my capabilities. The silence finally broke on the 12th day, when an elaborate congratulatory flower arrangement arrived at our new office address. The accompanying card read simply, "We are proud of you and your achievements. Love, Mom and Dad." No apology, no acknowledgement of their intervention, attempt or years of doubt. Just 7 words that somehow carried both genuine sentiment and remarkable inadequacy given the circumstances. Alex emerged as our unofficial family diplomat, relaying information in both directions with careful diplomatic neutrality that would have impressed international peace negotiators. "They're slowly processing everything," he explained during our weekly coffee meeting at our usual downtown cafe. Dad has been reading every article published about Executive Pathways and Northstar Corporation. Mom has been telling anyone who will listen that her daughter is revolutionizing corporate leadership development, though I'm fairly certain she still doesn't completely understand what that actually means in practical terms. The extended family's reaction proved predictably opportunistic and self-serving. Uncle Miguel emailed detailed proposals for potential consulting opportunities at his construction company and 3 associated businesses. Aunt Rosa invited me to speak at her book club's upcoming leadership discussion, suddenly positioning herself as my longtime supporter and unofficial mentor. Cousin Danny requested multiple informational interviews about transitioning from accounting to management consulting, his previous condescension replaced with transparent professional networking ambitions. I established clear professional boundaries with relatives turned opportunists, while focusing my energy on managing the sudden growth, media attention, and operational challenges that accompanied our newfound visibility. The authentic relationships within our expanding company culture became increasingly precious as external validation threatened to distort our core priorities and mission. My mother initiated weekly phone conversations that began awkwardly, but gradually evolved into something resembling normal parent-child communication. She began asking actual questions about my work, though her understanding remained superficial and sometimes charmingly confused. "I mentioned your leadership development program to my book club," she shared during one conversation. "Martha's son is having difficulties with his team at the insurance office and wondered if your company could provide assistance." These small connections, however elementary and basic, represented more genuine interest than she had demonstrated in the previous 3.5 years combined. My father's approach to reconciliation followed a different and more analytical path. He requested copies of our business plan, financial projections, and client success metrics, engaging with Executive Pathways through the data-driven frameworks he understood and trusted. His eventual email response, "Your revenue model demonstrates sustainability, impressive growth trajectory with strong competitive positioning in an expanding market," constituted high praise in his characteristically reserved communication style, though it notably lacked any personal acknowledgement of our damaged relationship or his role in undermining my confidence. The most surreal moment occurred when I hired Maria Gonzalez, a former colleague from Midwest Development Group, who had openly questioned my sanity when I resigned to launch Executive Pathways. "I honestly thought you were experiencing some kind of quarter-life crisis," she admitted during her interview process. "Now, everyone at Midwest uses you as the primary example of taking calculated risks and pursuing entrepreneurial opportunities." Her refreshing honesty and her expertise in organizational change management made her an ideal addition to our executive team. As our industry visibility increased dramatically, so did criticism and skeptical analysis from established consulting firms and competitors. A particularly harsh assessment from a competing CEO questioned our experience, methodology, and long-term viability in terms that momentarily transported me back to those family dinners filled with doubt and dismissal. The professional attack briefly triggered old insecurities until Alex's unexpected intervention. He appeared at my apartment unannounced, carrying Chinese takeout and determination. "You're spiraling again," he diagnosed with remarkable accuracy. "Remember what you told me about leadership development? New levels bring new challenges. These critics are just confirmation that you're disrupting something valuable and threatening their established market position." His business administration background combined with authentic brotherly support provided perspective I couldn't find elsewhere. "Besides," he added while distributing lo mein onto mismatched plates, "I've been seriously considering joining executive pathways after graduation. There's enormous opportunity to apply behavioral psychology to leadership assessment and development programs." The casual revelation stunned me completely. "You want to work here?" Alex nodded with genuine seriousness. "I've been following your progress more closely than anyone else in the family. Plus," he grinned with familiar mischief, "someone needs to help translate business consulting terminology into language mom and dad can actually understand and appreciate." The possibility of working alongside the one family member who had consistently believed in executive pathways created an unexpected bridge between my professional world and personal history that I hadn't realized I desperately needed. My parents' first official visit to our new headquarters occurred 6 months after the intervention disaster. My father moved through the office space like a methodical inspector, noting details from ergonomic workstations to enterprise-level technology, infrastructure with approving nods that he tried unsuccessfully to conceal. My mother charmed our entire staff with her genuine interest in their educational backgrounds and career paths, somehow managing to distribute homemade cookies despite my explicit requests for maintaining professional boundaries during their visit. The tour concluded with an unexpected moment of vulnerability from my father as he studied our client success wall displaying before and after organizational culture assessments from various companies. "I never really saw this," he admitted quietly, his voice carrying uncharacteristic emotional weight. "In my mind, you were still providing advice from your apartment to small local businesses. This is..." He gestured broadly toward the operations floor where 32 professionals collaborated on complex corporate transformation projects. "Genuinely significant. I should have asked to see your actual work much sooner." The acknowledgement wasn't quite a direct apology, but coming from someone who had built his entire identity around following established rules and avoiding professional risks, it represented extraordinary personal growth and recognition of his misjudgment. The Thanksgiving following the Northstar announcement marked our family's first holiday gathering since the intervention catastrophe. I arrived not as the disappointing daughter pursuing unrealistic dreams, but as the accomplished consultant, featured in multiple business publications throughout the region. The shift in family dynamics was immediately palpable, as relatives who had once offered job referrals at grocery stores and government offices now inquired about employment opportunities. At Executive Pathways, "My daughter is graduating with a psychology degree next spring," Uncle Miguel mentioned casually while helping himself to stuffing. "Any internship possibilities in your leadership development programs?" Despite the temptation to indulge in petty satisfaction over this complete reversal, I discovered greater peace in simply occupying my new reality without resentment or validation-seeking behavior. The family narrative had been permanently rewritten, not because I had systematically proven them wrong, but because I had remained faithful to my vision regardless of their approval or understanding. 1 year after Northstar Corporation changed everything, I stood at our expanded headquarters' floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Cedar Rapids, reflecting on the journey's most unexpected transformations. Executive Pathways now employed 67 people across 3 office locations, managed over $18 million in annual consulting contracts, and had recently launched our nonprofit foundation supporting leadership development in economically disadvantaged communities throughout Iowa and surrounding states. The company's exponential growth brought fresh challenges daily, but nothing approached the difficulty of those early years building something meaningful, while surrounded by persistent doubt and familial opposition. The anger that had once fueled midnight proposal writing sessions and defiant client presentations had gradually transformed into something more constructive and sustainable: genuine understanding. My parents hadn't opposed my entrepreneurial dreams from malice or jealousy, but from authentic fear for my financial security and personal happiness, as they understood and defined these concepts. Their generation had witnessed economic instability and corporate downsizing that shaped deeply ingrained beliefs about professional safety and predictable career trajectories. Their criticism, however painful and undermining, originated from love filtered through anxiety rather than deliberate sabotage of my ambitions. This realization helped me design Executive Pathways mentorship programs specifically tailored for emerging leaders from similar backgrounds, those building careers without family support, understanding, or encouragement. The program systematically paired ambitious professionals with experienced mentors who provided both technical guidance and emotional strategies for navigating unsupportive environments at home and work. 53 participants completed our inaugural cohort, with several receiving significant promotions and leadership opportunities directly attributed to their enhanced skills and confidence. My relationship with my mother evolved through intentional, honest conversations that required vulnerability from both sides. During a quiet dinner at my apartment one evening, she finally articulated what had driven her years of opposition and anxiety. "We watched you struggle in ways you tried to hide from us," she explained, nervously rotating her wedding ring around her finger. "The missed family celebrations, the obvious weight loss, how exhausted you appeared during holidays when you did attend. We interpreted those visible signs as evidence of failure because we couldn't imagine them as necessary sacrifices for building something worthwhile and meaningful." Her explanation didn't erase the painful memories of dismissal and doubt, but it offered crucial context that helped me release lingering resentment that had been poisoning our relationship. "I wish you had trusted me enough to ask about my specific vision and methodology instead of immediately assuming failure," I responded gently but honestly. "But I understand now that you were genuinely trying to protect me from what seemed like inevitable disappointment based on your own life experiences." This candid exchange marked the beginning of authentic healing between us, with my mother gradually becoming one of Executive Pathways' most enthusiastic advocates and unofficial marketing ambassadors, though she still occasionally forwarded job listings with notes like, "just in case something interesting catches your attention." My father's emotional evolution required more time, but ultimately reached greater depth and meaning. His initial visit to our company headquarters had initiated gradual change, but the genuine breakthrough occurred unexpectedly during a father-daughter lunch 6 months later at our usual downtown restaurant. "I've been studying your presentations to corporate clients," he admitted, apparently having watched recorded sessions available online through our marketing materials. "Your understanding of organizational psychology and change management principles is genuinely exceptional. You're demonstrably better at analyzing leadership dynamics than I ever was at managing my own teams." Coming from someone whose professional identity had been built around practical competence and risk aversion, this represented extraordinary acknowledgement and personal growth. "I didn't just doubt your business model and financial projections," he continued, maintaining direct eye contact despite obvious discomfort with emotional transparency. "I doubted your fundamental judgment and capabilities, which was completely unforgivable considering your education, intelligence, and proven abilities. I was comprehensively wrong about you, Rebecca." His direct admission of error and personal responsibility meant more than any industry accolade or funding announcement could have provided. "I forgive you completely, Dad," I responded simply. "And I would genuinely value your financial insights on our expansion plans if you're willing to contribute your expertise." This invitation to apply his professional knowledge represented our new foundation built on mutual respect alongside our personal connection. The subsequent Thanksgiving dinner unfolded with remarkable normalcy compared to previous years of tension and conflict. No interrogations about career choices, no thinly veiled suggestions about stable employment, no passive-aggressive comments about unrealistic dreams. Just family members sharing a meal with newfound respect for different paths to fulfillment and success. My brother Alex had indeed joined Executive Pathways after completing his business administration degree, heading our organizational psychology research division with remarkable success and innovation. His presence created an invaluable bridge between my professional and personal worlds that helped integrate previously conflicting aspects of my identity and relationships. Speaking at University of Iowa's Business School provided unexpected closure as I addressed students in the same lecture hall, where I had once absorbed traditional career wisdom that I later chose to abandon. The greatest challenge in leadership. Development isn't securing corporate clients or building assessment methodologies, I told them during my keynote presentation. It's maintaining conviction and vision when everyone whose opinion matters tells you that you're fundamentally mistaken about your own capabilities. Sometimes the most valuable professional skill is knowing when to listen carefully to advice and when to trust your instincts, despite universal opposition from people you love and respect. A young woman approached afterward, describing her family's resistance to her organizational consulting startup. How did you manage to handle the constant doubt and criticism from people you care about? She asked, her expression reflecting the same isolation and frustration I had experienced. Build a support system of people who understand your entrepreneurial journey and specific challenges, I advised. But also recognize that family opposition often originates from genuine concern rather than desire to undermine your success. Their fear for your financial security can appear identical to lack of faith in your abilities, but the underlying motivation is usually protective love rather than malicious sabotage. This perspective, impossible to maintain during my most difficult, struggling years, now came naturally and effortlessly, illustrating my own personal growth alongside the company's professional development. Meeting monthly with a fellow founder facing similar family dynamics became both mentorship opportunity and personal therapy for unresolved emotions. Jennifer Wang had developed an innovative employee wellness platform while her traditional immigrant parents pressured her relentlessly to pursue medical school and abandon her entrepreneurial ambitions. Our regular conversations helped her establish healthy boundaries while maintaining family relationships and understanding her parents' cultural perspective and fears. You demonstrated that it's possible to succeed professionally without family approval while still leaving space for eventual reconciliation and understanding, she told me during our final mentoring session before her major product launch. Your example showed me that I don't need their permission to pursue my vision, but I can still hope for their eventual support and pride. Perhaps the most profound reconciliation occurred during a private moment with my father following a major industry award ceremony where Executive Pathways received recognition for innovation in leadership development. He had attended alongside my mother, watching from the audience as I accepted the award and acknowledged our team's contributions to transforming organizational cultures across the Midwest. I understand now why you couldn't abandon your vision, he said quietly as we waited for our car outside the convention center. You saw something genuinely valuable that the rest of us were completely unable to see or appreciate. His words acknowledged both my entrepreneurial insight and his own limitations in a way that completed a circle of understanding between us. I needed to prove the concept to myself first, not to anyone else, I responded, realizing the fundamental truth of this statement only as I spoke it aloud. Though I genuinely wish you could have taken the journey with me rather than waiting for external validation at the destination. He nodded solemnly, processing the implications of my words. That's the invaluable gift you're providing other entrepreneurs through your mentorship programs, companions for the difficult journey rather than critics waiting at the finish line. It's more valuable than any financial investment could be. The wisdom embedded in his observation confirmed how dramatically our relationship had evolved from that intervention day when he had concluded I was delusional and needed professional help. Maintaining authenticity and core values through rapid success proved challenging in completely unexpected ways. As executive pathways attracted acquisition offers and strategic partnership opportunities, external voices pushed for decisions that contradicted our fundamental mission of developing authentic leadership rather than simply implementing management techniques. The principles that had guided me through doubt, struggle, and family opposition remained absolutely essential during prosperity, recognition, and exponential growth. Success changes the voices around you, but shouldn't change the voice within you, became my personal mantra during particularly difficult strategic decisions that tested our organizational values. The journey from misunderstood entrepreneur to recognized industry innovator taught me that external validation, whether from family members, corporate clients, or media outlets, ultimately matters less than fidelity to authentic vision and measurable impact on people's professional lives. The intervention my family staged to save me from entrepreneurial failure now serves as a powerful reminder that conviction sometimes requires moving forward when everyone who loves you believes you're heading toward inevitable disaster. Their inability to recognize my potential wasn't a failure of love or caring, but rather a limitation of perspective, shaped by their own life experiences and cultural conditioning. Have you ever pursued something important despite everyone around you insisting it wouldn't work or wasn't realistic? The experience of maintaining conviction during those challenging periods teaches invaluable lessons about self-trust, resilience, and the difference between confidence and arrogance that no business school or leadership program can adequately replicate. Sometimes the people who love you most understand your dreams least, but that fundamental disconnect doesn't make either your love or your dreams less valid or meaningful. Both can coexist and eventually find common ground through patience, understanding, and demonstrated results that speak louder than initial skepticism or fear. The morning of our second annual company retreat arrived with crisp October air and brilliant autumn colors that seemed to symbolize the transformation we had all experienced. Standing before 67 team members gathered in our training facility, I reflected on how far we had traveled from those early days of doubt and financial uncertainty. Executive Pathways had evolved from a desperate attempt to prove my worth into a thriving organization that genuinely improved lives and organizational cultures across the region. Our client testimonials spoke of transformed workplace relationships, improved employee engagement, and leadership breakthroughs that created ripple effects throughout entire companies. But perhaps more importantly, we had created a company culture that valued authentic leadership development over superficial management. Training. Every team member understood that our work went beyond consulting contracts. We were helping people discover and develop their own leadership potential in ways that honored their individual strengths while addressing genuine organizational needs. The retreat's morning session focused on our upcoming expansion into 3 additional states, a growth trajectory that would require careful attention to maintaining our core values while scaling our operations significantly. During the afternoon workshop on organizational culture assessment, I watched our newest team members collaborate with founding employees, sharing insights and perspectives that demonstrated the inclusive leadership principles we taught to our clients. Alex presented research findings from our organizational psychology division, showing measurable improvements in employee satisfaction and productivity among companies that had completed our comprehensive leadership development programs. His data confirmed what we had observed anecdotally, that authentic leadership development created sustainable positive change rather than temporary improvements in management metrics. As the day concluded with team-building activities and informal conversations, I realized that Executive Pathways had become exactly what I had envisioned during those early coffee shop brainstorming sessions. We weren't just another consulting firm offering standardized solutions, but a community of professionals dedicated to unlocking human potential in workplace environments. The drive home through Iowa's countryside provided quiet time for reflection on the unexpected turns my career had taken. 5 years earlier, I had been a junior training coordinator following someone else's vision of professional development. Tonight, I was leading an organization that had transformed not only my own life, but the lives of hundreds of employees across dozens of companies. The family relationships that had once been sources of stress and disappointment had evolved into genuine sources of support and pride. My parents now spoke knowledgeably about leadership development principles, and my mother had even suggested that her medical clinic could benefit from our team-building workshops. Uncle Miguel had become one of our most enthusiastic advocates, referring several construction companies to our services and proudly telling anyone who would listen about his niece's innovative approach to leadership training. Even Aunt Rosa had embraced her new role as my unofficial publicist, sharing our success stories with her extensive social network. But the most meaningful transformation had been my own evolution from someone who doubted her leadership capabilities to someone who helped others discover and develop their own authentic leadership styles. The skills I had developed while building executive pathways, resilience, strategic thinking, team building, and vision communication had proven to be exactly the leadership qualities my family had initially believed I lacked. The evening ended with a phone call from Jennifer Wang, the entrepreneur I had been mentoring through her own family challenges. "Rebecca, I wanted you to be among the first to know. My wellness platform just secured Series A funding, and my parents attended the announcement ceremony. They still don't completely understand my business model, but they told everyone there that they're proud of their daughter, the entrepreneur." Her joy and gratitude reminded me why the difficult journey had been worthwhile. Every obstacle I had faced, every moment of doubt I had overcome, every family dinner I had endured, had contributed to my ability to guide others through similar challenges. The leadership skills that had once seemed so elusive had been developed through necessity, perseverance, and unwavering commitment to a vision that initially only I could see. As I prepared for sleep that night, I reflected on the remarkable transformation that had occurred not just in my professional life, but in my understanding of what authentic leadership actually meant. It wasn't about having all the answers or never experiencing doubt. True leadership was about maintaining vision and conviction while remaining open to growth, learning from setbacks, and helping others develop their own capabilities along the way. The intervention my family had staged to save me from what they perceived as inevitable failure had ultimately become the catalyst for proving that leadership isn't determined by other people's opinions or expectations, but by our willingness to serve others while staying true to our authentic values and vision. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to grow and serve, and new chances to demonstrate that sometimes the most unlikely leaders are exactly what organizations and communities need most. 3 years later, I stood before the Iowa Business Leadership Council's annual conference, preparing to deliver the keynote address that would mark a full-circle moment in my professional journey. The auditorium held over 800 business leaders from across the Midwest, many of whom had initially dismissed executive pathways as too small or too inexperienced to handle their organizational challenges. The invitation to speak at this prestigious event represented more than personal validation. It symbolized how dramatically the conversation around authentic leadership development had shifted throughout our region. Companies that had once relied exclusively on large consulting firms were now seeking the personalized, culturally sensitive approach that had become our signature methodology. As I walked onto the stage, I caught sight of my parents sitting in the third row, my father wearing the navy suit he reserved for special occasions, and my mother clutching a program with my photograph prominently featured on the cover. Their presence represented a transformation that went far beyond professional recognition. It reflected a complete restructuring of our family relationships based on mutual respect and genuine understanding. The past 3 years had brought unprecedented growth to executive pathways, but more importantly, they had brought clarity about the true meaning of leadership in both professional and personal contexts. We had expanded to 5 offices across 3 states, employed over 120 professionals, and maintained long-term consulting relationships with some of the region's most successful companies. Our nonprofit foundation had provided leadership development training to over 3,000 individuals from underserved communities, creating pathways to advancement that wouldn't have existed otherwise. The scholarship program we established, in partnership with local universities, had already produced 15 graduates who were now pursuing careers in organizational development and human resources. But perhaps the most meaningful development had been watching Alex emerge as a true partner in building Executive Pathway's future. His research in organizational psychology had been published in 3 peer-reviewed journals, and his innovative assessment tools were being adopted by consulting firms throughout the country. The brother who had once quietly supported my dreams while our family questioned my judgment had become an industry thought leader in his own right. During our monthly leadership team meetings, I often observed the dynamic between Alex and our other senior consultants, noting how naturally he had developed the collaborative leadership style that we taught to our clients. His ability to bridge academic research with practical application had proven invaluable as we designed increasingly sophisticated development programs for complex organizational challenges. The morning of the keynote presentation, Alex had joined me for breakfast at our usual downtown cafe, offering the same quiet encouragement he had provided during the darkest moments of our early struggles. "You've come so far from that day when they staged their intervention," he reflected, stirring sugar into his coffee with the methodical precision that characterized all his actions. "What strikes me most isn't just the business success, but how you've maintained your authentic vision while helping so many others discover their own leadership potential. That's the real measure of effective leadership, not just achieving your own goals, but creating conditions for others to achieve theirs." His observation reminded me why our work together felt so naturally aligned with our core values and family relationships. The keynote presentation itself focused on the theme of authentic leadership development in an era of rapid organizational change. I shared research findings from our consulting engagements, demonstrating how companies that invested in genuine leadership development rather than superficial management training consistently outperformed their competitors in employee satisfaction, retention rates, and overall productivity. But I also shared personal stories about the importance of maintaining conviction when pursuing unconventional paths, about the difference between confidence and arrogance, and about the courage required to trust your instincts when everyone around you suggests a different direction. The audience responded with engaged questions and enthusiastic feedback that confirmed how hungry organizations were for leadership development approaches that honored both individual potential and collective success. Following the presentation, numerous attendees approached with consulting inquiries and partnership proposals, but the conversation that meant most came from Sarah Chen, a young entrepreneur who reminded me powerfully of myself 5 years earlier. She had recently launched a diversity and inclusion consulting firm, despite significant family pressure to pursue a more traditional career path in corporate human resources. "Your story about maintaining vision despite opposition really resonated with me," she explained during our brief conversation. "My parents emigrated from Taiwan and worked incredibly hard to provide me with educational opportunities they never had. They can't understand why I would leave a secure position to start my own business, especially in an area they consider too risky and politically sensitive." I shared contact information for our mentorship program and suggested several resources that might help her navigate the complex dynamics between entrepreneurial ambition and family expectations. Her gratitude reminded me how important it was to create pathways for the next generation of leaders who might face similar challenges in pursuing their visions. The drive home from the conference provided time for reflection on how dramatically my understanding of leadership had evolved since those early days of self-doubt and family skepticism. Leadership wasn't about having perfect answers or never experiencing uncertainty. It was about serving others while remaining true to your authentic values and continuously learning from both successes and setbacks. The skills I had developed while building executive pathways, strategic thinking, emotional intelligence, team building, and vision communication had been forged through necessity rather than formal training programs. Every obstacle I had overcome, every moment of doubt I had worked through, every difficult conversation I had navigated with family members had contributed to my capacity for helping others develop their own leadership capabilities. That evening, my parents hosted a celebration dinner at their home, inviting Alex and several close family friends who had witnessed our journey from skepticism to success. The atmosphere was relaxed and genuinely joyful, a stark contrast to those tense holiday gatherings when my career choices had been sources of ongoing family conflict. During dinner, my father stood to offer a toast that surprised everyone with its emotional depth and personal revelation. 5 years ago, I thought leadership meant having authority over other people and making decisions based on experience and practical considerations, he began, his voice carrying unusual warmth and vulnerability. Watching Rebecca build executive Pathways taught me that real leadership is about serving others and helping them discover capabilities they didn't know they possessed. She didn't just prove me wrong about her business potential. She showed me what authentic leadership actually looks like in practice. I'm proud not just of her professional success, but of the person she's become and the positive impact she's creating in so many lives. His words represented a complete transformation in his understanding of both leadership and my capabilities. But more importantly, they reflected genuine healing in our relationship that went far beyond professional validation. My mother added, her own reflections about watching me persist through challenges that would have deterred many people, and about learning to trust someone else's vision even when you can't initially understand or appreciate its value. Alex contributed observations about organizational psychology and the importance of family support systems in entrepreneurial success, noting how our own family dynamics had evolved to become a source of strength rather than stress. The evening concluded with discussions about future plans for executive pathways and the leadership development field more broadly. Several weeks later, I received an unexpected phone call from Dr. Margaret Chen, the retired Fortune 500 executive who had served as our early mentor and strategic advisor. Rebecca, I wanted to share some exciting news with you personally before it becomes public, she began with obvious enthusiasm in her voice. The National Leadership Development Association is creating a new award to recognize innovative approaches to authentic leadership training, and Executive Pathways has been selected as the inaugural recipient. The ceremony will be held in Chicago next month, and they've specifically requested that you deliver the acceptance remarks on behalf of the entire industry. The recognition represented validation not just for our company, but for the entire approach to leadership development that prioritized individual growth over standardized management techniques. More importantly, it provided a platform for sharing our methodology and research findings with leadership development professionals across the country. Preparing for the national conference required extensive collaboration with our entire team, as we developed presentations that would demonstrate the practical applications of our assessment tools and development programs. Alex led the research, presentation, sharing data that showed measurable improvements in organizational culture and employee engagement among companies that had completed our comprehensive leadership development initiatives. The conference itself brought together over 2,000 leadership development professionals from across the United States, representing consulting firms, corporate training departments, academic institutions, and nonprofit organizations. The diversity of attendees reflected the growing recognition that effective leadership development required multiple perspectives and approaches rather than one-size-fits-all solutions. During my acceptance remarks, I emphasized the importance of creating leadership development programs that honored individual strengths while addressing specific organizational needs and cultural contexts. I shared stories from our client engagements, demonstrating how authentic leadership development created sustainable positive change rather than temporary improvements in management metrics. But I also spoke about the personal journey that had led to founding Executive Pathways, acknowledging the family members who had initially doubted my capabilities but eventually became sources of encouragement and support. The audience responded with understanding and appreciation for the vulnerability required to pursue unconventional paths in leadership development. Following the ceremony, numerous attendees approached with questions about our methodology, requests for partnership discussions, and invitations to speak at regional conferences. The conversations confirmed that our approach to leadership development was addressing genuine needs in organizations across various industries and geographic regions. Perhaps most meaningful was a conversation with Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a leadership development researcher from Stanford University, who had been studying the effectiveness of different consulting approaches. Your work with executive pathways represents exactly the kind of innovation our field needs, she explained during our coffee break discussion. The combination of rigorous assessment methodology with culturally sensitive implementation strategies is producing measurable results that traditional consulting firms struggle to achieve. I'd love to collaborate on research that documents and shares these best practices with the broader academic and professional community. Her invitation to participate in university-level research represented an opportunity to contribute to the theoretical foundations of leadership development, while continuing our practical consulting work. The partnership would allow us to validate our methodology through academic standards while reaching new audiences of emerging leadership development professionals. The flight home from Chicago provided time for reflection on how far executive pathways had traveled from those early days of financial uncertainty and family skepticism. We had evolved from a desperate attempt to prove my capabilities into a recognized leader in authentic leadership development. But more importantly, we had created sustainable positive impact in hundreds of organizations and thousands of individual lives. The skills and insights I had gained through building executive pathways, resilience, strategic thinking, emotional intelligence, and vision communication had been developed through necessity rather than formal training. Every challenge I had faced, every setback I had overcome, every difficult conversation I had navigated had contributed to my capacity for helping others develop their own leadership potential. But perhaps the most valuable lesson had been learning that authentic leadership isn't about having perfect answers or never experiencing doubt. It's about serving others while remaining true to your values and continuously learning from both successes and failures. The leadership qualities my family had initially believed I lacked had been present all along, waiting to be developed through purpose-driven challenges and meaningful opportunities to serve others. 6 months later, as I prepared for Executive Pathway's 5th anniversary celebration, I reflected on the remarkable transformation that had occurred not just in our business, but in my understanding of what leadership actually meant in practice. We had grown from 3 people working in my apartment to over 150 professionals serving clients across multiple states. But the real measure of our success was the positive impact we had created in organizational cultures and individual lives. The anniversary celebration brought together current team members, founding clients, strategic partners, and family members who had witnessed our entire journey from skepticism to success. My parents served as unofficial hosts, proudly sharing stories about Executive Pathway's growth and impact with anyone who would listen. During my remarks to the gathered crowd, I acknowledged the various individuals who had contributed to our success. But I also emphasized the lessons we had learned about the importance of maintaining authentic vision while remaining open to growth and learning. Leadership development, I explained, is ultimately about helping people discover and develop capabilities they didn't know they possessed. The evening concluded with conversations about future plans for executive pathways and the leadership development field more broadly. We were launching new research initiatives, expanding our nonprofit foundation's reach, and developing innovative assessment tools that would be available to consulting firms throughout the country. But perhaps most importantly, we were continuing to demonstrate that authentic leadership development creates sustainable positive change in organizations and communities. The journey from family skepticism to industry recognition had taught me that true leadership isn't determined by other people's opinions or expectations, but by our willingness to serve others while staying true to our authentic values and vision. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the profound transformation that had occurred in every aspect of my life over the previous 5 years. The relationships that had once been sources of stress and disappointment had evolved into genuine sources of support and encouragement. The family members who had questioned my judgment and capabilities now served as enthusiastic advocates for executive pathways and authentic leadership development. Most importantly, I had discovered that the leadership qualities I had always possessed, empathy, strategic thinking, resilience, and vision communication, had been developed and strengthened through the challenges of building something meaningful from nothing. The intervention my family had staged to save me from what they perceived as inevitable failure had ultimately become the catalyst for proving that leadership emerges through service to others and commitment to authentic values. The story of executive pathways and my own leadership development journey continues to evolve, but the fundamental lessons remain constant. Authentic leadership is about serving others while remaining true to your vision, maintaining conviction while staying open to growth, and creating conditions for others to discover and develop their own potential. Sometimes the people who love you most understand your dreams least, but that doesn't make either your love or your dreams less valid or meaningful. The morning sun streamed through the expansive windows of Executive Pathways' newest headquarters as I reviewed the agenda for what would become the most significant board meeting in our company's 7-year history. The conference room overlooked downtown Cedar Rapids, where our journey had begun in my cramped apartment with nothing but determination and a vision that seemed impossible to everyone around me. Today's meeting would determine whether we accepted the acquisition offer from Harrison Strategic Consulting, one of the largest leadership development firms in North America. Their proposal valued Executive Pathways at $47 million, representing validation that extended far beyond financial metrics. More importantly, the acquisition would provide resources to expand our authentic leadership methodology to organizations across the United States and internationally. Alex sat across from me, reviewing financial projections with the same methodical precision that had characterized his approach to everything since joining our team 6 years earlier. His transformation from my supportive younger brother to a respected organizational psychology researcher and co-founder had been remarkable to witness. The academic papers he had published on leadership assessment methodology were now required reading in graduate programs across the country. Our acquisition deliberations weren't just about financial returns or professional recognition. They were about ensuring that our core values and innovative approaches would be preserved and amplified rather than diluted or abandoned. Harrison Strategic had specifically pursued Executive Pathways because of our unique methodology and measurable results, but maintaining our authentic culture within a larger corporate structure would require careful planning and strong leadership. Catherine Chen, our Chief Operating Officer who had been with us since the early apartment days, presented detailed analysis of how the acquisition would impact our current client relationships and ongoing projects. Her operational expertise had been crucial in managing our growth from 4 employees to over 200 professionals across 6 states, and her insights about cultural integration would be vital for making this transition successful. The discussion continued for 3 hours, examining every aspect of the proposed acquisition from financial terms to cultural compatibility to long-term strategic vision. Our leadership team demonstrated the collaborative decision-making process that we taught to our corporate clients, ensuring that every perspective was heard and valued before reaching consensus. As we concluded the meeting with unanimous agreement to proceed with the acquisition, I reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought us to this moment. 7 years earlier, my family had staged an intervention to save me from what they perceived as inevitable entrepreneurial failure. Today, we were finalizing a transaction that would establish Executive Pathways as a major force in leadership development on a national scale. The weeks following our acquisition announcement brought an unprecedented level of media attention and industry recognition. Business publications featured articles about our innovative approach to authentic leadership development, highlighting the research-based methodology that had produced consistently superior results for our clients. Alex was invited to present his findings at international conferences, while I received speaking requests from organizations across multiple continents. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source during a family dinner at my parents' home the weekend after the acquisition announcement. My father, who had spent decades working within traditional corporate hierarchies, stood to offer remarks that revealed how profoundly his understanding of leadership had evolved through witnessing my journey. 7 years ago, I thought leadership meant having authority over other people and making decisions based on seniority and established procedures, he began, his voice carrying emotional weight that surprised everyone at the table. Watching Rebecca build executive pathways taught me that authentic leadership is actually about empowering others to discover capabilities they didn't know they possessed. She didn't just prove me wrong about her business potential, she demonstrated what genuine leadership looks like when it's focused on service rather than status. I'm proud not only of her professional achievements, but of the positive impact she's created in thousands of lives and hundreds of organizations. His words represented complete transformation in both his understanding of leadership and his appreciation for unconventional career paths. My mother added her own reflections about learning to trust someone else's vision, even when you can't initially understand its value or potential. Rebecca's persistence through challenges that would have discouraged most people taught me important lessons about the difference between supporting someone's dreams and trying to protect them from disappointment. She observed with characteristic honesty. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone you love is the freedom to pursue their authentic path, even when it frightens you. Her acknowledgement of how her well-intentioned opposition had actually created additional obstacles was both painful and healing to hear. The acquisition process itself required 6 months of due diligence, legal negotiations, and cultural integration planning. Harrison Strategic's leadership team spent considerable time understanding our methodology and organizational culture, recognizing that preserving these elements would be crucial for maintaining the effectiveness that had attracted their interest, initially. During one particularly intensive week of meetings in Chicago, Harrison's CEO, Michael Torres, shared his own perspective on why executive pathways had become so successful in such a competitive industry. Your approach to leadership development addresses fundamental human needs that traditional consulting firms often overlook, he explained during a private dinner conversation. Most organizations implement leadership training programs that focus on skills and techniques without addressing the deeper issues of authentic self-awareness and values-based decision-making. Executive Pathways creates lasting change because you help people discover who they really are as leaders, rather than trying to make them conform to predetermined models. His understanding of our core philosophy provided confidence that the acquisition would enhance rather than compromise our ability to serve clients effectively. The integration plan we developed together emphasized maintaining our decentralized structure and research-driven culture, while providing access to Harrison's extensive resources and international client network. 6 months after the acquisition was finalized, I stood before the International Leadership Development Conference in London, delivering a keynote presentation that would reach over 3,000 professionals from 47 countries. The invitation to speak at this prestigious event represented recognition that our methodology had achieved global relevance and impact. My presentation focused on the critical importance of cultural sensitivity in leadership development, sharing case studies from our work with organizations representing diverse industries and geographic regions. The audience responded with engaged questions and enthusiastic feedback that confirmed how hungry the international leadership development community was for approaches that honored individual authenticity while addressing collective organizational needs. Following the conference, numerous attendees approached with consulting inquiries and partnership proposals from organizations across Europe, Asia, and South America. The conversations revealed that leadership challenges transcend cultural and geographic boundaries, but effective solutions must be adapted to specific contexts and value systems. The most meaningful connection came during a conversation with Dr. Priya Sharma, a leadership development researcher from the Indian Institute of Management, who had been studying the effectiveness of Western consulting approaches in non-Western organizational cultures. Your methodology's emphasis on authentic self-discovery rather than prescribed leadership models makes it uniquely applicable across different cultural contexts, she explained with obvious enthusiasm. I would love to collaborate on research that adapts your assessment tools and development programs for organizations in India and other Asian markets. The partnership would allow us to validate our approaches while learning from diverse leadership, traditions, and practices. Her invitation represented an opportunity to contribute to the global evolution of leadership development, while expanding our understanding of how authentic leadership manifests across different cultures. The flight home from London provided extended time for reflection on how dramatically my life had changed since that family intervention 7 years earlier. What had begun as a desperate attempt to prove my capabilities had evolved into a global platform for advancing authentic leadership development and creating positive impact in organizations worldwide. The relationships that had once been sources of stress and conflict had been transformed into genuine sources of support and encouragement. My parents now served as unofficial ambassadors for Executive Pathways, proudly sharing our story with anyone interested in entrepreneurship or leadership development. Uncle Miguel had become one of our most effective referral sources, connecting us with construction and manufacturing companies throughout the Midwest. Even Aunt Rosa had embraced her role as my biggest cheerleader, regularly sharing our achievements on social media and organizing speaking opportunities with her extensive network of professional women. The family members who had once questioned my judgment and capabilities now competed to claim credit for my success, though their newfound support was welcomed regardless of its somewhat self-serving motivation. Most importantly, Alex had evolved from my supportive younger brother into a genuine business partner and thought leader in his own right. His research in organizational psychology had contributed significantly to our methodology's effectiveness, and his presentations at academic conferences had established Executive Pathways as a bridge between theoretical research and practical application. During our monthly leadership team meetings, I often observed how naturally he had developed the collaborative leadership style that we taught to our clients. His ability to synthesize complex research findings into practical assessment tools had proven invaluable as we expanded our services to larger and more complex organizations. The success of our acquisition and international expansion created new opportunities, but also new challenges in maintaining the authentic culture that had been crucial to our effectiveness. Managing growth while preserving core values required constant attention and intentional decision-making at every level of the organization. We implemented quarterly culture assessment surveys to monitor whether our rapid expansion was affecting the collaborative, research-driven environment that had fostered innovation and client success. The results consistently showed high levels of employee engagement and commitment to our mission, suggesting that our integration strategies were successfully preserving what made Executive Pathways unique. A year after the acquisition, we launched the Executive Pathways Institute, a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing research in authentic leadership development and providing scholarships for emerging leaders from underserved communities. The Institute's inaugural class included 35 participants from diverse backgrounds and industries, representing the next generation of leaders who would carry forward our commitment to values-based leadership. The scholarship recipients included individuals like Maria Gonzalez, a first-generation college graduate who was developing a social enterprise focused on economic development in rural communities, and David Kim, a former military officer transitioning to corporate leadership while maintaining his commitment to servant leadership principles. Watching these emerging leaders apply our methodology to their unique challenges and contexts reminded me why the difficult journey of building Executive Pathways had been worthwhile. Every obstacle I had faced, every moment of doubt I had overcome, every family dinner I had endured had contributed to creating opportunities for others to discover and develop their authentic leadership potential. The Institute's research agenda focused on understanding how authentic leadership development could address contemporary challenges, such as remote team management, cross-cultural collaboration, and organizational resilience in rapidly changing markets. Alex led the research initiatives while I focused on strategic partnerships and program development. 2 years later, as I prepared to deliver the commencement address at University of Iowa's Business School, I reflected on the profound transformation that had occurred not just in my professional life, but in my understanding of what authentic leadership actually meant. The students in the audience faced many of the same choices I had confronted 7 years earlier, whether to pursue conventional career paths or risk everything for visions that might seem impossible to others. During my remarks, I emphasized that authentic leadership isn't about having perfect answers or never experiencing uncertainty. It's about serving others while remaining true to your values and continuously learning from both successes and setbacks. The leadership qualities that my family had initially believed I lacked had been present all along, waiting to be developed through purpose-driven challenges and meaningful opportunities to make a difference. I shared stories from our consulting engagements, demonstrating how authentic leadership development created sustainable positive change in organizations and communities. But I also spoke honestly about the personal costs of pursuing unconventional paths, acknowledging the family stress, financial uncertainty, and emotional challenges that had tested my resolve repeatedly. The most important lesson I wanted to convey was that authentic leadership emerges through service to others and commitment to values that transcend personal ambition. The intervention my family had staged to save me from what they perceived as inevitable failure had ultimately become the catalyst for discovering that true leadership isn't determined by other people's opinions or expectations. Following the commencement ceremony, numerous students approached with questions about entrepreneurship, leadership development, and navigating family expectations while pursuing authentic career paths. Their enthusiasm and determination reminded me of my own journey and reinforced my commitment to creating pathways for the next generation of leaders. That evening, my parents hosted a celebration dinner at their home, inviting extended family, members and close friends who had witnessed our entire journey from skepticism to success. The atmosphere was relaxed and genuinely joyful, reflecting the complete transformation that had occurred in our family relationships over the previous 7 years. During dinner, my father stood to offer a toast that surprised everyone with its emotional depth and personal vulnerability. Rebecca's journey taught our entire family important lessons about the difference between protecting someone from failure and supporting them in pursuing their authentic purpose, he began, his voice carrying warmth and genuine pride. We learned that true love sometimes means trusting someone else's vision, even when you can't understand its value, and that the greatest gift you can give someone is the freedom to become who they're meant to be. I'm grateful not only for her professional success, but for how she helped all of us grow in our understanding of what authentic leadership actually means. His words represented healing that went far beyond professional recognition, reflecting genuine transformation in our family dynamics that had required patience, forgiveness, and mutual growth from everyone involved. My mother added her own observations about learning to distinguish between realistic concerns and fear-based resistance to change. Alex contributed insights about organizational psychology and the importance of family support systems in entrepreneurial success, noting how our own family had evolved to become a source of strength rather than stress. The evening concluded with discussions about future plans for executive pathways and the leadership development field more broadly. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought me from family skepticism to global recognition in authentic leadership development. The skills and insights I had gained through building executive pathways, resilience, strategic thinking, emotional intelligence, and vision communication had been forged through necessity rather than formal training programs. Every challenge I had faced, every setback I had overcome, every difficult conversation I had navigated with family members had contributed to my capacity for helping others develop their own leadership potential. The leadership qualities that had seemed so elusive during those early days of doubt and financial struggle had been present all along, waiting to be developed through purposeful service to others. The story of executive pathways continues to evolve, but the fundamental lessons remain constant. Authentic leadership is about serving others while remaining true to your vision, maintaining conviction while staying open to growth, and creating conditions for others to discover and develop their own potential. Sometimes the people who love you most understand your dreams least, but that doesn't make either your love or your dreams less valid or meaningful. 10 years after that family intervention, Executive Pathways had become a global leader in authentic leadership development, employing over 400 professionals and serving clients on 5 continents. But more importantly, we had demonstrated that leadership development focused on individual authenticity and values-based decision-making creates sustainable, positive change in organizations and communities. The journey from family skepticism to international recognition had taught me that true leadership isn't about having authority over others, but about empowering others to discover capabilities they didn't know they possessed. The intervention my family staged to save me from perceived failure had ultimately become the foundation for proving that authentic leadership emerges through service, conviction, and unwavering commitment to values that transcend personal ambition. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.